Hello, sixth graders. Hope you're having a good Friday. Welcome back to sixth grade Latin. I hope you guys didn't mind learning a little more about third conjugation verbs on Wednesday. They're kind of tricky, not too tricky, but it is something we need to kind of keep looking at. So we're not done with chapter 7 or 8 rather. Not really. Uh, but I want to introduce just a handful more vocab words. These are probably some of the very last words we'll get. These are actually from chapter 10. Our curriculum has us kind of skipping over chapter 9 during the first year of Latin. So we're going to spend these last 2 weeks just kind of setting you guys up to be able to come back next year and start somewhere around, well, kind of like 8 and 9, basically. But it's jumping ahead a bit to chapter 10 is not going to hurt. Yeah, well, obviously the first initial weeks of next year will be a lot of review from like chapter 5, 6, and 7, and so on. But then we'll get back on track. But yeah, let's go through some of these last vocab words of the year. So amikitia, amikitiai. It's probably immediately reminding you of words like amicus, amo, the English word amicable, which means, friendly, or the Spanish word amigo, which means friend. But this is not friend. We already have amicus, which can be friend or friendly. So this is the thing that friends share between one another. So what is that? It's an idea, a concept. So this would be friendship. And I know you guys love Care Bears, and I've never seen. No, I guess I've seen an episode of Care Bears. I know enough to know that they care about friendship. Ora ori, what is that? What is like maybe the very first thing that pops into your head if you see this? Add a U in there somewhere. What would that be? It's just hour. It's just hour. So we already have the word tempus. This can mean more like time generally, but usually it means hour. The reason it can both mean hour and also time probably has something to do with the fact that time was much more vague for ancient Romans or anyone during that time period 2,000 years ago that we tend to focus on because, we didn't have watches. It would take a while to have like mechanical clocks and stuff like that, though we have the very first versions of those kind of coming up here and there, but usually they were relying on sundials, which sundials could only give so accurate a depiction of what time it actually was. The most specific you'd get is maybe like, oh, it's like 11:30, though it wouldn't so much be 11:30 for a Roman, but like, they would know it was vaguely in the middle-ish of the hour before high noon, right? Like everything is just kind of based around the fact that at some point the sun is at its highest spot, in the sky during the day, and that is 12 o'clock, duodecim for a Roman. But yeah, it was very big. Natura, natura, this is the hardest vocab word we will ever remember. It means nature. Yeah, but we actually have four very like minor quote unquote goddesses. It's weird to even call them goddesses. They're almost like nymphs that represent the four seasons that you see sometimes in statuary. Kind of statues a wealthy Roman might like to put out in their peristylum, or their courtyard in the middle of their house. Greeks didn't really have four seasons. Winter is so mild in Greece that they didn't really quite think of it as its own separate thing. It's autumn and winter were just kind of a post-harvest time. Senectus senectutis. This one's kind of hard. You might be able to get somewhere close, though. We get word senile, senility, which is the noun version of the adjective senile, and also senate, weirdly. So senate doesn't really help a lot, except that senate goes back to the Latin word senatus, and the Roman senate traditionally was explicitly supposed to have not young people, but people who were much more experienced taking up leadership positions in the Roman political system. Nowadays, in the U.S. Senate, we have older people and younger people, but originally it was kind of something reserved for people who had been around a little bit. So this is not describing a person; it's not a specific person. It's just the idea of old age. The statue is weirdly, it's not supposed to be scary, but those eyes are sometimes kind of weird. You had pupils at one point, right? The paint just kind of fades. Um, That is Cato the Elder. We've mentioned Cato the Younger. He's a guy who's around during the time of Julius Caesar and Cicero, and he's like friends with Cicero. But some 150 or so years before him, we have Cato the Elder, who every day at the end of his speech in the Senate would say, Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. If you remember, Carthage is that African territory that was a serious thorn in Rome's side for over a century. Timor timoris. You might be able to guess this one. We get the word timid from it. So when a mouse is timid, it's because it is filled with a feeling. Starts with an F. It's called fear. Fear. So that's Medusa there. Talk about bad hair day. She would certainly make me fearful. Veritas veritatis. We get the words verify and veritable from this. Do you guys have the adjective veris vera verum? I think you do, right? Yeah, so veris is just true, like something is true. So this is the noun version, it's third declension, so it must mean just truth. Truth. So when you're verifying something, you're verifying that it is true. Yeah, you guys do have veris. Why did I forget about that? You're probably thinking like, what does Wonder Woman have to do with this? The lasso of truth is rarely used to make someone confess, like make her enemies confess the truth. It's like a truth serum effect. It's one of those abilities that doesn't come up all that much nowadays because it's a little goofy. It's kind of a relic of an older age. Just like how Superman can blow really cold air, isn't that weird? He never does it, but like he can blow like tornado force gusts at people and make them really cold. It's weird. Via vi. So we actually use this word all the time in English, but it doesn't necessarily explain what it means, kind of. But maybe you guys have heard this, maybe not, I'm not sure. But so some might say something like, we learn via practice. Or like, I'll call your grandmother via the telephone. Or I'll cut the lawn via the lawnmower. So what are we doing with that? We're like, what do we mean when we're saying that? Well, we're kind of saying like by way of, right? So this means way. And it is literally, it's an exact Latin word, still exists in English all the time. Maybe you haven't heard this, but you probably will. Watch out for it. People tend to reach for this word pretty commonly. So it can mean way, as in like an abstract way, like as in by way of, and the way we use it, it's in the ablative. But it can also mean like a literal road or path, which is not figurative. It's like an actual road. This is a picture of the Via Appialia, which is the longest road in Rome. Rome was really well known. Oh, there's the bell. Oh, I'm sorry, the Via Appia. I know that sounded weird. Via Appia, the Appian Way. Appian Way would run up and down the peninsula, all the way up to Rome, and then continue north. People underestimate how important roads were, like thousands of years ago. A civilization was only as good as its roads. Which, yeah, like if you think that sounds weird, I don't blame you. It's something I would underestimate too. But it does take very effective bricklaying and plotting and charting and like figuring out where the roads are actually going to build what we call infrastructure, which is this huge word for just the kind of system by which people get around. And this is how, trade relies on this, merchants rely on this, farmers rely on using roads to get, to the city to sell their goods and back to their farms in the countryside. And how quickly a civilization develops has largely to do with how quickly people can get around. So it helped that Rome was on the Tiber, so people could, get to Rome by ship, but all up and down the peninsula, you needed to be able to access Rome. And, I mean, back in the day, your horses weren't necessarily going to, like, if they were pulling something, couldn't just cut through some random forest. A road meant a lot. Think about it. It's weird. Audio audire. What does this mean? So this is a verb, and you can probably already tell that we get the word audio from this, right? It's literally identical to that form. An audible, an auditory. What do these words have to do with? Audible means something that you can hear, and auditory is it just is sound based, basically, is what that means. So this just means to hear. Now we have audeo, audere, which is second conjugation to dare, like audacity. This is our fourth and final verb conjugation, which is the grammar for this chapter. So it has a long ire, but these basically behave the same as third conjugation. There's Orpheus there, who he was so good at music that even rocks somehow heard his music and would like float when he started jamming. Deco Decra, we get I'm almost certain we've talked about this word before, but we're finally officially getting it all the way in chapter 10 here. So Deco Decra, we get words dictate, dictionary, diction, dictator. Um, those aren't necessarily gonna help, but let's go through. So dictate is when you are speaking something. It often is used in the context of you're speaking something that someone else is writing down for you, like an amanuensis is a fancy word for someone who writes, or a scribe. Dictionary is a book full of words. Diction is usually used to describe how someone is speaking, their speaking style, their way of public speaking. And dictator, this one it's kind of a stretch, but a dictator is essentially someone who blanks people what to do, who tells, right? So this means to say or to tell or to speak. So it's all about communicating. Viva vivra, our last one, viva vivra, we get words like vivacious, vivid, survive, vivacity, victual, and convivial. These may or may not help, so I'll go. So vivacious means lively. Vivid means lifelike, like if you have a vivid dream. Survive means, living. Vivacity is kind of liveliness. Victual is a super. You don't really hear this word anymore. It means food, actually. Something that helps one live. It's kind of like a southern country word. And convivial is like lively, again. So this must mean to live, right? All right, guys, for our little weekly history chat, let's just fly through a lot of the big tentpole rulers. And what I mean by that, like the rulers that stick out. We don't have time to go through every single Roman king or emperor or whatever. We've gone over a lot of the big ones, but I just want to take us from the very first ones all the way to what is essentially the last one. And I'll keep it pretty quick. So we've mentioned this Romulus guy. He is the very first king of Rome, in the namesake of Rome itself, or Rome is. He is the namesake of Rome, yeah. Then Numa was supposed to be the second one, and then we have, let's see, 4 more, and then Tarquinius is the last. So 7 kings of Rome, 7 hills of Rome, 7's a great number. And then after this period, we enter the Republic. Early in the Republic, we have this guy Cincinnatus, the namesake of Cincinnati, the city, who is this reluctant leader. He's a farmer who people know to be a good leader, and during a time in which some people on the Italian peninsula were attacking Rome, they said, hey, Cincinnatus or Cincinnatus, we really need your help. We know you don't even want to be a leader, but can you come help us out for a little while? And so they temporarily made him dictator. This was during the time of the Republic, but they would sometimes, during emergency situations, give someone full power if they trusted or thought that they needed that person's guidance. And so Cincinnatus helped them through that situation, and then as soon as he was done, he went back to his farm. And this is exact or very similar to what George Washington does. George Washington does not want to be president. He doesn't want to be a leader. And a lot of philosophers would argue that is the kind of leader that we paradoxically want, someone who doesn't actually want the role, but just does it because they know on some level that they will be able to perform it to some level of satisfaction. So this is the Roman Republic. We don't have kings anymore. But we have some crazy generals like Marius and Sulla during the time of when Julius Caesar is a kid, just deciding to be dictator. So Romans made Cincinnatus dictator because they wanted his help. Marius and Sulla, they just got power hungry, and Roman generals in general, no pun intended, had too much power and were not checked in many ways. And so if they wanted to march on Rome, they would do that. And they would give little teenage Julius Caesar an idea for something he might try when he was much older. And of course, we go on to have all of that. And at this point, you guys are very familiar with that. Then we have Augustus, the first actual emperor. Now we're in the Roman Empire. He lives from 27 BCE to 14 CE. So he actually crosses that little division between, BC and AD or CE, whatever you want to call it, current era, or Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. So he is the first emperor. And we have the Pax Romana. Things get off to a good start in a lot of ways. I mean, Augustus isn't perfect. There's issues, for sure. He bans Ovid, which is just straight up mean. But in a lot of ways, I think we all kind of agree he did a pretty good job. We don't get so lucky with the next ones, right? Remember Little Boots here, Caligula? That's what his name literally means. Poor guy. He had a rough childhood, but what comes around goes around. He was a mess of an emperor. He had a lot of his family executed, and he even made one of his horses a senator. You heard me right, guys. He's a crazy person. All right, Nero. We're skipping over a couple people like Claudius. Claudius is between them, but then we get to Nero, and he's just as bad as Caligula. He's known for being in charge during the time that Rome, like a huge chunk of Rome, burns down. Nero blames it on the Christians, who are the newest like scapegoat that you can kind of like mess with. Though it maybe likely had to do with Nero, and definitely had nothing to do with Christians. So yeah, Nero, not a good guy. But there are good emperors to come. So he finishes his emperorship in 37. It's only 15. That's like 20 years after Augustus finished up. We're already done with Nero. Caligula's only in charge there for 12 years. And then he gets a much longer time, 22. Huh. Okay. If we jump ahead a mere 60 years after this, we get a string of really impressive emperors. So this guy, his son, and then Hadrian's grandson, Marcus Aurelius, are all thought to be kind of like the last truly good Roman emperors that we have, and they all in their own ways are very impressive. And so this is 2nd century, even though they're living in the hundreds is what we would call them. That is the 2nd century, right? Because Nero and Caligula, that's 1st century AD. Kind of confusing, or at least it is to me. I don't know. Under Trajan, we have the peak of the Roman Empire's territory. This is the biggest the Roman Empire will ever get. It is at max capacity in terms of the breadth and the scope. Trajan does a good job of pushing further into Asia than they had ever gone. Britain, which was previously acquired, just very recently, he solidifies that territory. And you can see big chunks of Africa, big chunks of Macedonia and the Balkan Peninsula, which is that area north of Greece, which they had for a long time. And it's just really impressive. I mean, look how far north he gets, all the way into modern day England. And his son Hadrian keeps it up. We have something called Hadrian's Wall. You can actually go to Scotland. Isn't that crazy? Scotland is that if you see Britannia in the red in the upper left, that's England, and then Scotland is just the chunk that's not red to the north of it. Ireland is the island to the west of it. But you can literally see remnants of Hadrian's Wall in Scotland, which is crazy. Well, let's see. I guess it might be northern England. I'll follow up on that and let you guys know. But definitely England, like all the way in northern England, Manchester. Definitely Manchester. I think that's where it is. Yeah. So, okay. Not quite Scotland, but some people might consider Manchester Scotland. Not quite. But they're very close. They are very close. And so Hadrian and Trajan are mostly known for their just how far they take the limits of the Roman Empire. Then Marcus Aurelius is known as a philosopher king. If we borrow a term from the philosopher Plato, we didn't get a chance to talk too much about philosophers, but we got that word, philosophia, early in the year, and it's the kind of study of like deeper questions about the meaning of everything. And so Marcus Aurelius was not only a Roman emperor in more straightforward ways. He was very well read, and he was a writer. We actually have work from him called Meditations. And he's a proponent, meaning a fan, of this specific style of philosophy called Stoicism, which is, it's kind of hard to explain quickly, but one of the big tenets of it, which is actually a cool idea, is that things that are not within your control are things that you should never worry about at all, right? I think a lot of people worry about things that they can't control, and Marcus Aurelius and Stoics would say, hey, if it's not something I can affect or change, then I can't spend any time worrying about it. That's a waste of my time. That's not effective. So and it's more than that. There's all kinds of aspects of Stoicism, but Marcus Aurelius really fulfilled what Plato thought was an ideal ruler of a nation, which is someone who studied and was a quote unquote philosopher. Constantine. So we're skipping big gap here. So Marcus Aurelius, essentially the last truly great Roman emperor. It's not like everyone after him is bad, especially the next guy is great too. But he's the last kind of like truly notable one. And we're drifting to what we call the Silver Age of Rome, as opposed to the Golden Age, which has passed by now. So it's all downhill from here, basically, to be very overly simplified and reductive. But if we skip ahead a full 126 years, we arrive at Constantine, who moves the capital of Rome to Constantinople, which is all the way to the east of Italy. If you can see it right there to the right, it's between the Black Sea and the Adriatic. I'm sorry, the Aegean Sea. And yeah, this is a major shift. So and it's not just that. Okay, so that's, you can still go to Constantinople. It's called Istanbul. It's the capital of Turkey, and there's still a lot of the really amazing architecture left over there. But I mean, this is very much not Italy, right? The city of Rome is still way over in Italy, but we're saying that, quote unquote, Rome is now in the east. And Constantine made Christianity legal. He made it the official state religion. So the age of going to the Temple of Jupiter and all of that, that's coming to an end. Rome is finally saying, hey, you know what? Those Christians who have been around for a couple hundred years, they might actually be onto something. Let's really kind of like make this the official thing. And in addition to that, they started speaking Greek as opposed to Latin. And part of that had to do with the fact, if you see, they're really close to Greece. They're closer to Greece now. Well, I mean, it's kind of equidistant, but they're kind of more in that zone. They're more in the Greek-speaking world at this point. There's a lot of Greek speakers in Turkey, and Constantinople is in modern-day Turkey or Asia Minor. So that purple bit of territory, that's the extent of what the Eastern Empire will be. Now, there are moments when they reclaim the western half, but essentially the western half is left to just kind of fall into chaos, largely due to a variety of factors that involve German barbarians and the like, who like join the Roman army, but then aren't loyal to Rome. They're just loyal to like the paycheck that they're getting, essentially. And yeah, the western part of the Roman Empire falls into chaos for hundreds of years, essentially, and Italy will have a lot of trouble ever reuniting. It takes hundreds and hundreds of years for Italy to ever reunite in the way that they were under the Western Roman Empire. And then, so yeah, we say, oh, that's the end of the Roman Empire. Like, it kind of ends in the 5th century. Like, that's it. That's a kind of an exaggeration, because the Roman Empire in the East keeps on going for hundreds and hundreds, all the way through the medieval ages, all the way up to roughly 1500, when finally they get conquered by the Ottoman Empire. But yeah, they do just fine, just because they're not in Italy, just because they're not, worshiping Jupiter, and just because they're not even speaking Latin anymore, does not mean it's not Rome. They're in a different part of Eurasia, basically. And then over in the Western Empire, we basically have warlords squabbling to claim that they are the emperor of the Western Empire, when in fact they're probably just making it up, and there's just a lot of civil war going on. And this I just think this guy looks kind of funny. Romulus Augustus. Can you imagine the audacity of someone naming themselves Romulus Augustus? Wow. And it's not even just that, it's Imperator Kaiser Flavius Romulus Augustus. Flavius is another big Roman family. This guy, as far as we kind of like scholars consider, is the last emperor of the Western Empire, which again, it's not really Rome at that point. It's moved on. And to think all of this started with one guy, and by that I mean the actual empire, right? Everything that Julius Caesar did, crossing the Rubicon, going to war with Pompey and all that, set everything in motion to set Rome on this path towards empire that would eventually result in them leaving Italy altogether and kind of cloistering themselves in the East, which is, Asia. People don't think of Rome as being Asia, or in Asia, but by the end it was. And they stay in a bit of a little bubble for almost 1,000 years after that. And by the time they fall, the world is changing, and England is around the 1600s, it starts to become this major power. And so Rome kind of has to pass this torch on to other people like England and the Holy Roman Empire, which is actually Germany, and so on and so forth. All right, guys. Might have been loud. Sorry. I'll talk to you guys on Monday. We're gonna kind of keep cherry picking stuff from chapter 8 and 10 for another week or so, and uh, and then we'll be wrapping it up pretty soon. So I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you on Monday.